Perfect. And so this is part 2 of Unity Prayer for Unity of Kitchener. And I am grateful for being invited and humbled. And since I won't be able to see anybody, if you have a question, a comment, and concern, just speak up, okay? You know, hey, Paul, whatever, stop, Paul, or whatever. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to be asking you if you're seeing it the way I want you to. Right now, you should be seeing the design and setup screen. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then from the beginning, you should be just seeing the slide, Unity of Kitchener, Unity Prayer Part 2. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. And away we go. So,
Are you going to make it full screen?
well, it is full screen on mine.
Oh,
Wait a minute. Are you seeing 2 slides?
Yeah, it is. It's full screen.
Okay. All right. Are you seeing just one slide, though? Why we pray the Unity?
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Okay, so why we pray the Unity way? First of all, prayer does not change God. Why? Because God isn't changeable. That's why God is utterly dependable. If God was changeable and capricious and could be angry one time and loving the next and punishing one time and offering grace the next, that God would not be dependable. So prayer does not change God, it changes us because our humanity is changeable, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we do not pray to God. Myrtle said, where would you send your prayers to? And I say that since you are divine and the totality of the divine then is present at the point of you, you're not praying to God. When we pray, we're praying from the awareness of God or the awareness of our divinity. And in this case, when I'm praying, since I believe God is principle and principle includes principle and law, I'm claiming and declaring and asserting principle. And so a quick review of the 5-step prayer process. And you don't have to follow this. This is simply a model. Relaxation, concentration, meditation, realization, and appreciation. And notice that's what I pretty much covered in our opening prayer. The breathing was a time to relax. Concentration is when I brought our attention onto something specific. And then there was a time of silence. That's meditation. And then there was a time of claiming. That was realization. And then appreciation at the end. So relaxation, concentration, meditation, realization, and appreciation. And then this wonderful quote from Cora and Charles, a prayer with desire, without desire in it, a prayer without sincerity in it, a prayer without soul in it, and a prayer without spirit in it is a fruitless prayer. Now, the thing is that if you're a person of all of our culture, soul and spirit are synonyms, but they weren't for Charles Fillmore. Soul was more like our personality or our ego. So we're going to change this prayer to include those understandings and to put it in a more positive form. A prayer with desire in it, a prayer with sincerity in it, a prayer with personality in it, a prayer with principle in it is a fruitful prayer. Now, if you're wondering why they did this way, because what this form does for us is saying that these things are critical to prayer. If you don't have them, then look at how you're praying and consider again. So when we say a prayer with desire in it, we could say we're using our power of love to desire to do this, to be with another person. When we say with sincerity, well, sincerity for me includes the power or principle of faith. And when we say with personality in it, well, you can't pray without your personality in it, but you want to be, the saying today is when we pray, we want to be all in. In a sense, we're using our body, we're using our personality, and we're using principle. And then, of course, principle is the primary thing or things we're going to be claiming for other people or for ourselves when we're doing a unity prayer. And so prayer makes man master in the realm of creative ideas. Well, and today we would say prayer makes you master in the realm of creative ideas, or prayer makes them master in the realm of creative ideas. Any way you want to say that, but the truth is you and I have power over divine ideas and principles and laws. Let me stop there. Any questions or comments? Hey, Jamie joined us. Hi, Jamie.
Hey, it's good to see everybody.
Yeah, how you feeling?
I am actually doing quite a bit better. I still have some challenges, but all of my testing is coming back good.
Great.
I'm working with a physical therapist who's just wonderful. So I'm very hopeful. I'm very convicted. Let me put it that way.
Don't you
I
love
am
that?
convicted, yes, that I'll be back to normal.
Yes. So
soon.
conviction to me is the strongest synonym for faith that we could possibly have. So faith ranges from hope to conviction in my mind. And I guess we could put something before hope, and that would be a wish. But going on to conviction. Hi, Ida. I'm seeing people here as I'm looking at the screen. Okay, any comments, questions, concerns about what I shared up to now? Okay, we're going to carry on. So, a couple more quotes from Charles and Cora. Man should not crawl and cringe before an imaginary king on a throne. I love the imagery of this because it so aligns with how I perceived the God I understood as a child, and maybe going into adulthood until I began to question the answers I had been given by the church that I was raised in. So you and I should not crawl and cringe before an imaginary king on a throne. Then they say we should affirm with conviction. There's that word. So we should affirm with very strong faith those mighty words uttered by Jesus. All authority hath been given unto me in heaven and earth. And so one of the things that Charles promoted was us taking the words of Jesus that were recorded about him in the Gospels. We should take those words for ourselves because we are just as divine as Jesus ever was. So then what is heaven and earth? We need to know that to understand what's being said there. So heaven and earth are two states of mind, the ideal and the manifestation. Now, the ideal would be God. It would be principle. It would be principle and law. It would be divine ideas. And then he goes on to say, one, heaven is the realm of pure ideas, the other earth of thought forms. So when this is saying all authority hath been given unto me in heaven and earth, we don't know if Jesus was talking about a heaven out there and the physical earth, but metaphysically interpreted, Heaven is the realm of divine ideas or divine ideals or principles. And then earth is the realm of our humanity, our consciousness.
15, 16. Seriously. 16.
Someone needs to be, someone is not muted. Will everybody please mute? And then you can unmute when you want to talk, okay? So then, given this understanding of the metaphysics of what heaven represents and what earth represents, then we have, all authority hath been given unto me in the realm of divine ideas and in thought forms. So let's put this in the first person, as my friend and licensed unity teacher in Atlanta suggests. Her name is Jan Gurr. All authority hath been given unto me, or we could say, I have all authority in the realm of divine ideas and in thought forms. That's more declarative, isn't it? I have all authority in the realm of divine ideas and in thought forms. And if we have authority in thought forms, we also have authority in feeling forms, because thought and feeling come together.
What are thought forms?
You just spoke several there. That question is a thought form. My answer is a thought form.
So anything that comes to us in our mind.
Yes. Any thought
Okay.
and any related feeling. Good question. Yes. Anybody else? So if you turn it around, thought forms, you could say forms of thought, and that makes it clearer, I think. And you're going to be using thought forms when you pray, right? Okay. So then, since we're talking about divine ideas, which is a synonym for principle, remember that, and a divine idea is also a synonym for power when we're talking about the 12 powers. The 12 powers are 12 divine ideas or 12 principles. So divine ideas or powers or principles are potential forces. So this is an adapted quote to bring it up to 2022 standards. Divine mind is the idea that contains ideas. Divine ideas are potential forces waiting to be set in motion through proper formative vehicles. The thinking, feeling faculty in humankind is such a vehicle. So divine ideas or principles or powers are pure potentiality. They're pure potential. And they don't have the capacity to do anything. You and I are the doers. You and I are the creators. And so when we lay hold of a divine idea or power or principle, we are tapping into that infinite potential. And we bring that power forth into this relative reality that changes. We kind of activate it. Is that making sense? Okay.
That was a beautiful statement.
Which one, Charles's?
No, what you just said.
Oh,
We are doers who tap into divine potential, and I didn't get the rest, but I thought it was beautiful.
yeah, so divine. So the divine is potential force. It's pure potential. And we are the ones that activate it. Now, there could be other creatures that activate it. Well, in a way, every animal is using these principles unconsciously to manifest their lives. The thing about metaphysics is helping us as humans to become aware of the principles and laws and use them more consciously. And hopefully for the good. Yes.
You said animals, so also like trees and flowers, when they bloom, they're tapping into their divine potential.
Yep.
And the leaves change colors, fall off, you know, it's all circle of life.
Well, thank you for that. So every living thing is using principle according to law. And primarily as living things, they're using the 12 powers. And in order to be living things, they're using the principle of life. We're pretty sure this cell phone is not using the principle of life, or a rock or a stone. Now, we don't know if it has consciousness, all of that inanimate stuff has consciousness or not, but consciousness must be there because consciousness is everywhere present as well. Okay. All right, so then to remind you again, and let's say this in the first person, prayer makes me master in the realm of creative ideas. So let's say that together. Master makes, excuse me, prayer makes me master in the realm of creative ideas. Yes. And so that brings us to the point of where we got in part 1. Now we're starting the new slides for part 2. So now we're getting to some great quotes from Emily Cady in her book, Lessons in Truth. One of the unerring truths in the universe is that there is already provided a lavish abundance for every human want. In other words, the supply of every good always awaits the demand. Okay, so here's the interesting thing about this, because Emily was focused on the good, but we know that there are human wants that we would categorize in not so good. Well, those human wants put a demand on supply. So we got to drill down into this, because the first time I read this, or maybe the first 3 times I read this in Lessons in Truth, I was still of the notion that God was the supplier of my abundance, literally, that God gave me things, that God did things for me. So we got to talk about this in a little different way. So I updated this to be more reflective of 2022. One of the unerring truths in the universe is that there is already provided a lavish abundance of divine ideas for every human want. In other words, the supply of divine ideas of every good always awaits the demand. Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. So what power do you think underlies want? Which of the 12 powers?
Desire.
Desire, which is the power of love. So very good. All right. So we could say our use of the power of desire is an activating factor. Yes. And it's a basic idea. If you have a chance to go to the YouTube channel of Unity of Kitchener, I just did a talk this morning on basically slimming down the unity metaphysics in a way that I think is more understandable. And one of the fundamental premises is everything that's changing. So that includes physical things, that also includes the things of mind, our thoughts, ideas, beliefs, images, feelings, perceptions, experiences, attitudes. All that stuff is changeable. In order for that to exist, there must be a correlating, pre-existing divine idea or principle that's being used to make it manifest. If there weren't a correlating principle or divine idea, it could not exist. That's how connected our changing reality is. We can almost just say inseparable from the unchangeable principles and laws. So did we follow that? Okay. And so this lavish abundance of divine ideas or principles, that's our supply. That's our supply. In prosperity, Charles says, God doesn't go to the grocery store to get our groceries. What God is the divine ideas that we use to have thoughts and feelings in our relative minds, and then we go and get the groceries. So everyone follow that? Okay, good. So
Could you put the slide, not the last one, but the second last one up for a second?
yeah, sure. So that was the last one. Did you want
The one before that.
this one?
Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
So I'll read it again. One of the unerring truths in the universe, this is like a law, is that there is already provided a lavish abundance of divine ideas for every human want. In other words, the divine ideas for every good always awaits the demand. We must put a demand on them.
You're almost done?
Okay.
Or you're allowed chapter?
And then this is me updating it. Now, here's the thing I want you to be clear on. The supply of every good always awaits the demand. Well, that's only half the story. The supply of every want always awaits the demand. And we are the deciders of what we want. And we can want good things, we can want bad things, we can want ugly things. Anything we want is not determined by the principle, it's determined by us. So again, on supply and demand, another truth, and this is actually saying it another way, another truth is that the demand must be made before the supply can come forth to fill it. To recognize these two statements of truth and to affirm them are the whole secret of understanding faith, faith based on principle. Well, why is this faith based on principle? It's because the supply, our supply, your supply is made up of principle. And then updating it again, another truth is that the demand must be made before the supply of divine ideas can come forth to fill it. To recognize these two statements of truth and to affirm them are the whole secret of understanding faith, faith based on principle. Now, the language is, you got to put up a demand on it for the supply for the divine ideas to come forth. It makes it sound like they're not right here. It's like we put the demand and now the supply comes. That's not it. The supply is right here. Your demand latches hold of them. And you don't even need to know what they are. It's just more helpful if you do.
Like a magnet.
Well, like a magnet in a way. Yes, yes. But it's a magnet where the iron fillings already are. But it's not, but that magnet isn't magnetized until you turn the switch, which is demand. Okay?
Would it be proper to say when we ask? Or is that a whole different ball of wax?
So asking is in the old theological structures of things. There's no one or no thing to ask. Who would you be asking?
So I guess another word would be claim. Instead of
Claim,
demand.
demand, claim. Yes. Yes. Assert, you could say. That's what an affirmation does. An affirmation puts a demand on principle.
But a lot of people feel that they have to beg.
Well, then we got begging going on, don't we?
Because like my niece was talking about, she begged God. And I said, you don't have to beg God. It's
Yeah.
already there.
And
But
then there's
yeah.
bargaining with God,
Oh, yeah.
which most humans break when they get what they want anyway.
I've done that. Totally been. I wanted to mention too, I forget which book of Myrtle's, but it was interesting to me how she defined ask. She says the other way, ask isn't just putting it into words, it's your actions.
Yes.
How you're stepping out in the world. That's asking. So I guess in the full definition, right?
Yes.
We could. Yeah.
Yes. And Susan said, I think of it as calling forth a particular power. Yes. Yes. And when you name it, you're calling it forth into your awareness. Into your awareness. So that's great, Susan. I want to talk a little bit about reading Myrtle. And so if you read Myrtle, always keep in mind that the vast majority of what we have from Myrtle are responses to letters she has received. And in her own way, she's responding to that letter based on where Myrtle thinks that person is at. Okay. And so often her answers are couched in language that would reflect how the person wrote to her. And so often there are terms like, there are terms that are very separating, separate God from ourselves. Okay, and so you have to understand that she's meeting her audience of one in the best way she possibly can. How to Let God Help You does a little better at talking more clearly about what Myrtle believed. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, back to the slides. I feel like this is back to the video. Okay, where are we here? Do I want to say anything more here? Okay. So assertion and affirmation, I'll say a little bit about that. I am moving more and more away from the word affirmation to the word assertion, because for me, assertion is more powerful. Affirmation is like a soft claiming, where assertion is putting a demand on things. So an affirmation is a positive statement of truth. It's also a realization statement of truth. It's not just positive cotton candy type. It's a realization. And realization is when you know that you know that you know something is true. So a positive statement of truth. And by the use of affirmations, we claim and appropriate that which is ours in truth. I like the word appropriate, though it's already yours. It's more like we claim and bring into awareness that which is ours in truth. And so all the principles and divine ideas are already yours. There isn't a God that can give you more. There isn't a God that can take them away. There's nothing so horrible that the principles or the truth, which is principles laws, wouldn't always still be there. They don't have the capacity to shun you. They simply are everywhere, totally present. And so then what is ours in truth? Divine ideas and the laws to express them. Now, in the previous session, I talked more particularly to the laws. The primary law involved is the law of mind action. The law of mind action. And the divine ideas, you just have to simply know what they are. And of course, 12 of them are the 12 powers. And then there's a bunch of other ones that are really, I'm finding as I use them more and more, important for me to know. And so these laws to express them is really important. To affirm anything is to assert positively that it is so. So we're not asserting or affirming something to make it true. We're asserting and saying it because it's already true. So I'll start this again. To affirm anything is to assert positively that it is so, even in the face of all contrary evidence. So as an example, I was with a friend's mother yesterday or the day before, and when I would go to the hospital to visit somebody when I was the minister of prayer and pastoral care for Unity Church of Overland Park, often I would go to the chapel first and center myself in the awareness of truth, in the awareness. I wouldn't have said it this way in that time, but in the awareness that this person is fully divine and fully human, so that when I would walk into the room, no matter what they looked like, no matter how many tubes and machines were assisting the person to achieve well-being, that stuff I ignored. I was focused on the person and their divinity. And then Emily goes on to say, we may not be able to see how by our simply affirming a thing to be true, a thing that to all human reasoning or sight does not seem to be true at all. We can bring this thing to pass. We're bringing it to pass because the principles and laws are already right there, not only at the point of view and your awareness, but the point of the person you're praying with, whether they're present in the room with you or present on the other side of the globe, because mind in its own way is non-local. And prayer works non-locally. You don't have to be there to have it be effective. Let me stop there. Any questions or comments about that?
I just love how you put that. It's beautiful.
Thank you. I've had a lot of practice. All right, so moving on.
Another oops.
Did we lose Paul?
I'm sure he'll come back.
That was
Yeah,
a
I don't-
disappearing
Oh, my
act.
goodness.
I don't see him.
No, I think
Yeah.
he dropped off. I'm not sure why. As he said, moving on, he disappeared.
Yeah, that was a good trick.
We
He
need
moved
him to
on.
come back.
Let's
really-
will him back in. Let's will him back into the room.
Yes, let's do.
You have to be positive. We see him back in the room and
Yep.
continue to talk.
I think he called forward his power of invisibility.
Let me just give him a quick message.
It's
Right down.
possible. It's possible he may have lost the internet.
Oh, I hope not. Yay, he's coming back.
Is he?
You certainly moved on, Paul.
You're on mute.
He's muted.
Yeah, I just all of a sudden was gone. I didn't realize it. Okay, let me move the screen to where I want it.
The screen and not yourself, huh?
There we go. Phew. Well, it seems to be an interesting day on Zoom, doesn't it?
Oh my goodness, no kidding.
Okay, so let me go back to share screen. And let me wrap this up because we're pretty much covered all the slides or explored them. And I'm going to slideshow from the beginning. And then we got to go.
Can I just say, Paul, when it's interesting today, when in service, when we did our financial abundance prayer, divine love, I noticed that we still had as me in there.
Yep.
And I wrote that down to take it out because that you shared something in the first training about divine love as me, and it's not as me. And I would love you to explain that here because for me that was so clear after your explanation.
Okay.
And now I'm quite sensitive to it.
Well, congratulations on sensitizing yourself to it because it's really important because our words reinforce our belief system. Okay. And so when we use the word as in the English language, okay, so when I go to a costume party as Spider-Man, am I ever Spider-Man?
No.
No, I'm going like Spider-Man, okay? And so when we say God as me, is me ever God? No, so it's a way in which we deny our divinity. And that is an unhealthy and unworthy form of denial. And so instead of saying divine love as me, I say divine love flowing from me, which identifies the location of divine love. Okay. And so what most people say is divine love flowing through me. And if divine love is flowing through me, that puts it out here. It comes through me and then goes there. And really what it is divine. When I'm using the power of love to be loving, I'm desiring to be loving and it's coming from me. It's not coming from somewhere else. So is that complete enough, Cheryl?
For me, it is. I just, I wanted to give people the opportunity that I had to really sort of embrace that.
You're on mute again.
Yes, so I put it on mute because I had an alarm set with Alexa. And if I told to turn it off, everyone else's would have gone off.
Laura had her hand up.
All right, so how are we doing? Good?
Yep.
Okay.
Laura?
I wanted to
Go ahead.
I wanted to mention that what Cheryl was referring to was our blessing of our tithes and offerings.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a new version of that?
Yeah, divine love flowing through me blesses everything I give and everything I receive. Notice I don't say blesses and multiplies.
Why not?
Well, if you haven't noticed, everything you give and everything you receive doesn't come back multiplied. So it's an erroneous statement.
But don't you think sometimes it does?
Sometimes, maybe. So we want to be careful that that phrase, how do I want to say that? Oh, excuse me. I guess we could keep it. So the old one used to say, divine love flowing through me blesses and multiplies everything I am, everything I give, and everything I receive. Well, your I am can't be multiplied. So thank you for catching me on that. So if you're going to use that, you got to be careful. Okay. Yes, Laura.
Okay, so you said divine love flowing from me.
Yes.
That puts all the powers right here.
Yes.
And all of a sudden that gives me the courage to truly turn the corner.
Yes.
We really are okay without that God in the sky. We're really okay. We're
Yes.
not cast in this limbo land.
No, we're not.
It's right here.
Right here, all the time, in its fullness, in its entirety. Okay. So think about this. The entirety of the divine is present at every point in space, all at the same time. And just think about this. You have 37.2 trillion cells, and the entirety of the divine is present at each and every one of those cells. And at every point in space, all at the same time. And so my thing about languaging, I'm not the language police outside of the classroom. Okay. That's not my job. But when I'm in the classroom, I want to let everyone know that how that person might be using it and how the other people in the classroom might be hearing it. You see? And so I really don't want to reinforce old belief systems, or at least belief systems I've let go of. And so we want our prayers to reflect unity teachings. Hi, Bob.
I was going to say too, Reverend Paul, talk about a healing assertion. Just, to think about that. Each cell from third, like that's a healing assertion.
Yes,
Powerful,
yes,
powerful.
actually, and we can amp that up. It's a total well-being assertion. So when we have somebody present that we're praying with, I pray pretty much the way I pray. I don't try to make it fit what the person's request if it's in a unity setting. If it's not in a unity setting, then I might alter my language to be in alignment with the person. For example, the person I was sitting in vigil with Friday, I know is my mom would say, a dyed-in-the-wool Catholic. And so my silent prayers with her were as Catholic as I could make them. But in a unity setting, I want people to hear unity prayer. And then, so look, I've never have had anybody at least tell me to my face or email me later they didn't like my prayer. But if they did, we would have a really good conversation about that. And beginning, that conversation would begin with kindness and compassion, acknowledging what that person experienced with me, rather than me saying, I didn't mean it that way. Just really acknowledging what they were going through. And then creating an opportunity to explain unity prayer. Okay, so how are we doing? Any more questions or comments?
Paul?
Yes, Wendy.
Okay, this morning I listened to Unity Service, and one of the topics she spoke about was how we pray. And she's talking about this person who prays. She said, you have a pain in your big toe, and the whole prayer is about the pain in your big toe. Not about the healing and your wholeness and your wellness. Not at all. And that's not the unity we are praying, because you see yourself as you are seen by the divine, perfect, whole, and free. Can you hear me?
So it's very hard for you to hear you, but I was hearing you. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So when I'm praying with somebody, let's say it's a healing prayer about their big toe, I acknowledge the prayer about the big toe, but what I say is I use a good denial. As we enter this prayer, we give no importance to your big toe. And then I go into the affirmative side of things. You know, at the point of your big toe, in fact, through your whole body, there is divine intelligence, divine wholeness, divine health. All of it is present right there. And we know right now that divine intelligence is directing every power to bring your toe to total well-being right here and right now. Something like that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
So my question has to do with that. As I get so bogged down thinking that I'm not praying correctly, I'm not praying at all.
Okay.
So, you know, I have my favorite prayers. I too was brought up in a Catholic setting. Now I feel like I've outgrown a lot of the Catholic dogma, but you know, there's certain prayers that really I like. I feel like they're all encompassing. And so, you know, I know that when I'm saying them now, I have a different outlook at them. But at the same time, it's like, well, how should I be praying? Because I get all bogged down in my head about it. And then I just like, well, I'm not praying because I don't know how this all works.
Okay.
So I understand what you're saying about, you know, the laws and principles and stuff, but to try and keep that all present, it's like the prayer disappears and it becomes all about that. So there's a, I don't know.
So how did you learn those other prayers?
As a kid in grade school.
Yeah, but how did you learn them?
Yeah.
You learn them by repetition. You learn them by studying them. You learn by hearing them over and over and over again. And now they're like old and trusted friends. And the importance behind those would be the comfort you give yourself when you say them. And what would also be important is, I bet you're giving, I think you said this, you're giving those prayers a different content than when you were praying when you were 7 years old, for example, because you have different understandings. So that's important too. However, or I'd say, and you're never going to, a person can never learn how to pray this way if they never do it. So it's going to be awkward. But the thing is, the use of the principles and laws isn't just for prayer. It's for everything in our lives, especially when we're working with something difficult. And the principles and laws can be used as a diagnostic tool as well. A lot of people miss that point. So like if I go to a meeting and the meeting goes south and goes really bad afterwards, I'll do my own decompression on it. I'll think about it. I go, oh, so what power or what principle was I forgetting about in that moment? So that the next time when I go into a meeting, I'll take a moment, I'll invest a moment and go, okay, I need to remember these two powers or principles because I ignored them the last time. So in that process, I learned about myself that I can get so passionate that my zeal turns people off, or they decide to get turned off. I call it being zeal vicious instead of zealicious. And so being aware of that now, that's a tendency when I get really passionate, before I go into something important, I remember that I want to be zealicious and not zeal vicious. I also remember that whatever's happening, I want to be generous and benevolent as a kind of focus going in. So they are tools to use in the moment, and they can be diagnostic tools as well.
So would you say
go ahead,
it's
Monica.
accurate that all prayers may bring you comfort and prayer changes over time?
So the way you pray changes over time. Yes. And I think we pray, a lot of us pray as a form of comfort. Yes. Somebody's mic is open. I can't tell who it is. I'm hearing noise in the background. Thank you for, yeah. Okay, Laura.
So I'm just.
Oops.
Oh, you muted yourself.
No, that was me. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Thanks,
My
Cheryl.
apologies.
I'm just sharing that I've been working with the Lord's Prayer for a long time now. And at some point I came across an I am version of the Lord's Prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the lines is, thy light consumes every temptation. And in using your teachings, Paul, I've changed it now to say, focusing on light, I can turn away every temptation.
Beautiful. Yes.
I need to focus on light.
Yes.
And then that's all it takes.
Yes, I need to focus on light.
Done.
Also, yes.
Fill this with divine idea,
Yep.
light or truth
Yep.
or good,
Yep.
and boom, I'm in the right direction.
Yes. Yes.
So nothing out there does it. It's
Nothing.
I need to change.
Yes. And in the talk, I shared something. You can only control the controllables. And often we can't change anything beyond ourselves. And so instead of trying to change others or change events or change situations, we need to change ourselves. Even in the midst of working to do outer change, we need to keep us centered in the light that we are.
I have another question.
Okay, I saw Susan's hand before yours,
Okay, go ahead.
Joanne. We'll come right back to you. Susan,
Thank you.
you are muted.
Sorry about that. I was just wanted to mention with Laura's comment about the Lord's Prayer. I work with that too, especially if I'm going through a challenge of some kind, and you know, the kind that can wake you up at night, then you wake up and maybe you have to get up to the bathroom and suddenly whatever you were worrying about is there. So for me, that comes to me really quickly, the Lord's Prayer. Why? Because I've said it over and over again. But what the unity philosophy and our principles and laws, our way of thinking, has made that prayer such a powerful prayer for me and getting me centered. Because when I say nevertheless, not my will, your will be done. For me, it's just like I'm letting go and letting God, right? That concept of that, I am in the flow and I am aligning back with all that power within me. And I'm letting go of struggle. I don't need to struggle. What I need is here right now. And so for me, it truly brings me comfort. And even if I'm half asleep or half awake, I'll use the positive part of that, I can remember it and it can work for me and get me centered. But I'd love to hear your full version, if you could share that, maybe with Cheryl. And I'd love to take a look at that and maybe work on my own version.
Yes. So if you want to put that, Laura, in the chat stream, you can do that, or you can just share it with everybody. I do have a couple comments just to invite you and hopefully influence you about a few things you said. I don't believe in letting go and letting God anymore. Because letting God means God's going to do it. And God don't, in my philosophy, God don't do nothing. Okay. God is the principle that I need to focus on to continue waking up. Okay. And let us not forget that. So this goes back to what Joanne was saying in a way, actually directly. And at the beginning of this workshop in part 1, I talked about how desire is a form of prayer. Desire itself is a form of prayer. So when we're worrying, that's what we're desiring in the moment. So worry is a form of negative prayer. And we really have to be aware of that. So I applaud you in that when you're aware that you're worrying, to shift to something more supportive. And only you can tell anybody what's supportive for you. And so if the form of the prayer works right now, fantastic. And I'm just suggesting maybe a way to amp it up and to take more responsibility. And one more thing, and I want you to really feel how powerful you are. The unity teachings are just words on a page or words flowing out of somebody's mouth. You're the one who has chosen to use them in the way that you're using them. The teachings didn't change you, you changed you. Okay, Joanne. Gotta unmute.
It's pretty well been cleared up, but I guess I remember when I first started with Unity, they would pray, sing the Our Father, and it was just so moving to me that it actually shifted everything inside of me. And so I guess that's why I have an attachment to it. But the same thing is that they don't do that in the services anymore. And is it because of the languaging?
It is because of the languaging, and they still play it at Unity Village every other day.
Oh.
But you see, if you can hear it from a metaphysical point of view, then those words are fine. Mm-hmm. But if you hear it as our Father who is out in heaven somewhere, hallowed be thy name, well, then you're in the old belief system. And if you want to be in the old belief system, that's none of my business.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
But let me just do a little more on that. So Charles Fillmore believed when Jesus used the word Father, the word we use today for Father is Christ, the Christ within. And so heaven, where's heaven located? It's within. So our Father, which art in heaven, becomes the Christ which is within me. You see what I'm saying? So the metaphysical interpretation really changes the prayer, or at least the meaning of the prayer at the point of you and the point of me.
So the line that Charles Fillmore changed was, leave us not in temptation. Would it be accurate to say, I overcome temptation, or
Well, so,
is there a better way of
what he changed, so it would be best to say something affirmative like that. Or I give no power and importance to temptation. That would be a denial. You could do something like that. But I don't know why we're trying. Well, I think we're trying to rework a prayer that we all love and cherish from our childhood. And remember, Jesus didn't say, pray exactly like this. He said, pray like this. All right. And look, I just assume he was a good old Jew. And he believed God was a male being out somewhere. And he seemed to do pretty good believing all of that.
Well, I was speaking with my cousin yesterday, and she said she always remembered her grandmother saying, but by the grace of God, I go.
Yeah, that's a common phrase. As if God's making it possible for you to move forward.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Jamie.
I wanted to ask about thought substance a little bit. I'm not sure if I really understand it, but it would be really crucial to me as the doer to understand it. Because if it's the building up of the thought substance, which triggers arousal, which triggers motivation, then it would be good for me to understand that better.
And it's really good to understand it in the context of prayer, because you're going to want to build up thought substance. Okay, so first of all, do I have it here? I don't see it. Physical things are made of physical substance. That's one definition of substance. Physical things are made of physical substance. Everybody got that? Okay. Then there's the substance of your mind. So physical things are made of a physical substance. What is your mind made up of? We can't hear you, but the big two categories are thoughts and feelings, where thoughts are thoughts, ideas, beliefs, and images, and feelings include feelings, emotions, perceptions, experiences, and attitudes. Okay, and physical substance is changeable, and mind substance is changeable, isn't it? Your thoughts, ideas, beliefs, and images are changeable. Your feelings, emotions, perceptions, experiences, and attitudes are changeable. Yes? So those two forms of substance are changeable. Okay? So when you are holding a thought in mind with feeling, you begin to manifest or express more thoughts and feelings in your mind that are similar or related to it. Yes? And so that process is building up mind substance. Okay? And those are all substance with a little s, because they're relative, they're changeable. Anybody have questions about those? Okay, now, here's where it gets weird. There are three things that Charles talks about as substance in the absolute unchanging realm. There's a capital S substance, which is the divine idea of form or shape. Okay, so So remember I said everything that's changeable has a correlating divine idea associated with it. Well, everything that has form or shape, this has form and shape, you have form or shape. In order for you to have form or shape, you are depending on the divine idea of capital S substance. Okay? Now, there's another way he uses the word substance. And the way he uses this word substance is a synonym for God. If we remember that God is the principle which contains all principles, or God is the divine idea which contains all divine ideas, this definition of substance goes like this. And I want to make sure I got the reading right, so I'm going to look it up. This is in section 10J of Hasselbeck's Heart-Centered Metaphysics, okay? So this capital S substance, that's a synonym for God, is called the divine idea of the underlying reality of all things. So the underlying reality of all things is all divine ideas. And all divine ideas is a synonym for God. Let me do that again. Charles defines this substance as the divine idea of the underlying reality of all things. The underlying reality of all things is divine ideas. All divine ideas. And all divine ideas is the divine idea that God is. So that's essentially 4 definitions of substance. And there's one more that I think he uses more or less as a synonym for building up thought substance. He calls it, we gather substance in order to manifest. Well, we're doing more than gathering divine ideas. We're gathering thoughts and feelings too. And we're gathering physical stuff to manifest something as well. So how's that? Jamie?
The ideas make sense. It's just that practical piece of then trying to work with them, I guess,
Okay.
is part of what I struggle with.
Okay, so let's see if I can make it a little practical, and then we'll get to Diane. All right. So every thought and feeling you have relates back to a divine idea. Okay. So we can use that information when we decide to pray or whatever we're going to do. Before we do it, we can use our thoughts and feelings to think about what divine ideas does this connect to. Then we can claim those divine ideas. And then we have more thoughts and feelings. And because we're having more thoughts and feelings, we're activating the law of divine action even more. So we're building up thought substance in the relative realm, which means we're building up arousal, which will eventually lead to motivation. Sometimes that arousal and motivation happens like this. It does with dark chocolate with me. I have the thought of dark chocolate, and before long, I'm getting up and getting the dark chocolate. Other things take time to build up in consciousness. And so when we're praying, all of that's happening at one level or another. In fact, there was a slide I used this morning. Let's see. Let me hit escape. Let me pull up that slide. Oh, here we go. So are you seeing this? The law of supply is a divine law. Hello? Yes? Okay. So I'm gonna put this on slideshow so we have, oh dear, I gotta go way beyond that. I forgot. I did that wrong, but this one, I can find it just as fast this way as backing up. You're looking at this so fast going, what in the hell did Hasselbeck say in this talk? There we go. Are you seeing the law of supply? Okay, so the law of supply is a divine law. We could call it a spiritual law. But he says this means that it is a law of mind that must work through mind. So spiritual laws or divine laws work through mind. And then he goes on to say, God will not go to the grocery and bring food to your table. I already said that. But when you continue to think about God as your real supply, when you continue to think about God as these divine ideas with infinite potential, everything in your mind begins to awaken and to contact the divine substance, which is the divine idea, right? As you mold it in your consciousness, ideas begin to come, which will connect you with the visible manifestation. So you get awareness, you get arousal, you get motivation, and then you're connecting it to something to manifest. So how are we doing with that? Did that help, Jamie? Okay, great. Diane.
I forgot.
Oh, bless your heart.
That's okay. If it was important, I would remember it.
Well, I only wish that were true for me. Those sorts of things pull back in the station an hour or two later. So if it pulls back in the station, send me an email, or we still have 30 minutes here. Who knows? Maybe it'll come back in.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Anyone else? How are we doing?
Mhm.
So at the beginning of this talk, I talk about the problem. The reason why metaphysics doesn't seem simple is because we have all this vocabulary that is like a type of jargon, and you earn your chops to teach metaphysics when you begin to understand all the jargon. Okay, so there's something like, in my research, there's something like 30 different names for the law of mind action. And if you're like me, when I'm reading these as a newbie, I think they're all different laws, but they're really not. And there's, I'm still counting, and there's 20 some synonyms for God. Some of them traditional, some of them not traditional. If you don't know their synonyms, like me, you'd be thinking he's talking about something else, but he's not. And especially when Charles uses traditional terms like Lord and Jehovah and Spirit and God, if I'm not on my toes, I'm thinking about the God of my childhood. And I don't want to think about that God anymore. Okay, so how are we doing?
Good.
Great. So there was only a few more slides to do. So I'm going to do them as a way to wrap up the slides, but we still have time that, as far as I'm concerned, we can talk about anything you want. Okay.
Well, the thing that's been coming up a lot for me is every answer is within. All answers are within.
Mhm.
Well, this is true to a certain extent. Sometimes to discover them, someone else has to say them, or has had to write them in the book, or something. See, we're all influencers, and the question is, in what direction is your intention for influencing others? Okay, let me get this PowerPoint out of the way.
Paul, if I could just say here, you're always giving these small ideas, right? Could you repeat that last statement? That's a small idea. Oh
What,
my goodness.
That we're all influencers?
Yes, and what direction, or what is your intention?
Yeah,
Repeat
and
that?
you decide how you're influencing people. It's just, so it's kind of a riff off of something from A Course in Miracles, which is we're always teachers and students to each other. And I will teach you who I think I am based on how I treat you. All right. Do you think you're divine, or do you think you're this lowly worm of the earth that Christianity taught me? But I took it on. So I'm responsible for taking it off. Okay, let's see. I think we're gonna start with this slide. I think this is where we were. Now I've lost it again. I got to share screen first. All right. So I think we were here. The formative prayer, the formative power of, try this. The formative power of my thought and word is governed by my faith in myself and the vehemence with which I think, feel, and speak. Did you hear that? So whenever you see something like this and you think it's really good, use the Jan Gur moment or method. Put it in the first person. The formative power of my thought and word is governed by my faith in myself and the vehemence with which I think and speak. And I always like to add feeling. The vehemence with which I think, feel, and speak. And so when I pray, I do not lower my head in prayer anymore. Do not lower your head in prayer. Why? Because we know from science that lowering our head, putting our hands together in our laps, lowers our sense of power. That's science, folks. So I don't want to do that. I want to stand in my power. So I don't lower my head in prayer. I pray with my head held high because that's a power position. And I pray from the awareness of my personal power. And my personal power is what I'm manifesting from divine power. Prayer makes you and it makes us master in the realm of creative ideas, and we can add laws there. And this is why we pray the unity way.